Hello, hello. I know I didn't give any notice this time, so my apologies that I didn't notify folks that I was doing a live. But I woke up with something on my heart and I wanted to share. And also, one of my friends texted me yesterday and said, talk about the Aries eclipse. I'm not convinced whether that was a command or a request because this person has a cardinal sign rising, but I tend to listen to them. So, yeah, it's fine. So, hello everyone. Yes, I didn't time it to be at it's 11:11 my time it was, but I guess it was 1:11 on the East Coast in the United States. So, I won't keep you long because I'm about to start my sessions for the day. Hey, what's going on? Katalk. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. K-Touch? K-Talk? You let me know. Because I haven't met you in person. I hope you're coming to Norwalk. And maybe I get to meet you there. Ray, what's going on? Jaquinox 32. Venus and Virgo. Hello, everybody. And I see my friend, Dr. Patricia Bell. I thought she came in. Hello. And, oh, yeah. Vivi Henriette is here. Cool. Well, let me just get into it. Ketoch. Okay. Shukran, shukriya. Okay. Hey, Jack Dev. Um, so a few things. What I want to say about this eclipse is going along with my Nyctanastic perspective, which is more looking at things in review, rather than me focusing on, some broad perspective on what the eclipses might mean, which is still important, but that's not exactly what I do. Um, I do that when I have a chart. So when I have your birth chart, this is what I would focus in on. But if you want to do some things yourself, one thing to reflect on is that the eclipse by degree, which is different from other cycles like the Saros cycle, but the eclipse by degree works in 19-year cycles, meaning that this eclipse resonates with what we would have experienced at the same degree, or roughly in terms of parts of your chart at that same degree, 19 years ago. So in terms of 19 degrees of Aries, which is the nature of the solar eclipse that's coming up, it's comparable to what you experienced 19 years ago. So I do want to mention that this eclipse will resonate if you have 19 years of life, and I'm going to assume many of you do have 19 years of life. You may, at least 19 years of life, you may resonate with some particular things. Now, if you were very young, you may not remember it. Maybe you were 7 years old. But you might think about what was happening around your life, with your parents. Maybe if you remember some things that you were feeling. These are things that you can focus in on, particular issues that may have come up. And it is going to be related to particular degrees. So, for instance, if you have something close to 19 degrees of Aries or Libra, we could also say by cross, meaning by square, 19 degrees Cancer or Capricorn, this eclipse will resonate for you. This will show up in some way in your life. This is true also for the lunar eclipse that we just had on Monday, on the 25th. So that eclipse was at 5 degrees Libra, because we're going by the moon. The sun was at 5 degrees of Aries. The moon was at 5 degrees of Libra. So that also will have some measure of resonance, but not exactly in terms of 19 years. So that's going to hark back to another time frame. Now, you're like, okay, this is cool. What might it mean in the broader sense? What woke me up this morning, both on a personal note, which I won't go too much into, but also thinking about what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about, just giving you a heads up, I'm going to talk about what's happening with Andrew Huberman. Um, he is I believe, a 2-degree Libra sun with a moon in Gemini. We do not know a birth time for him. And there's a reason why I want to talk about Andrew Huberman. Now you're like, why aren't you going to talk about P. Diddy? Okay, I can talk briefly about P. Diddy, but I'm going to say some things very clearly about P. Diddy that I think isn't the bigger lesson that we might gain from Andrew Huberman. Okay, so let me go back. What hit me today, or this morning, was thinking about Aries and the Libra axis, in terms of these eclipses, and specifically as we're dealing with the nodes. And the north and south node, which are intersection points of the moon's orbit around the Earth and the imaginary orbit of the sun around the Earth, those intersection points, as lessons related to opening the heart. And we talk about, or at least I talk about, when we talk about Aries and Libra, I talk about this as the axis, or we could say the circuit of interdependence, because we're dealing with Aries independence, and we're dealing with the sense of connection and not so much dependence, but interconnectedness with Libra. But we're also dealing with the balance point between courage and consideration. Aries is courage, and Libra is consideration. And what that means is when we talk about courage and consideration, that is the dynamic that we're looking for or talking about when we're speaking about Aries and Libra, especially in terms of that particular eclipse. But what hit me is that we're ultimately dealing with how we open our hearts. And let me explain. So we actually have just gone through, or we're going through 2 cycles of the lunar nodes being in signs ruled by ruled by Mars and ruled by Venus. So we went along the Taurus-Scorpio axis or circuit, and then because they moved backwards, the nodes, we went into Aries and Libra. So when we're talking about Mars and Venus, we're talking about how we deal with desire. And one way in which we can also understand desire is in terms of what the heart seeks, what the heart wants, and what the heart needs. And so when we're talking about Taurus and Scorpio, we're talking about how that might appear in terms of manifestation or actualization. I call that particular circuit the circuit of actualization, because we're dealing about self-actualization, and we can also talk about self-actualization through material actualization, more Taurus versus the passion of Mars and Scorpio. When we moved into the Aries-Libra axis, we moved away from a focus on materialization in that way, and more so the idea, and I hope my sound is still on because someone just tried to call me. Sound tends to go off. Someone let me know if I've lost sound, and I'll figure it out. But anyway, in terms of dealing with Aries and Libra, when I say it's about courage and consideration, Aries is how we deal with that sense of, projecting ourselves into the cosmos. Thank you, everybody, for letting me know how we project ourselves, how we have the courage, willing to put ourselves out there. Libra isn't just about putting ourselves out there, but how we're putting ourselves out there in ways that affect or we're affected by others. So that's a consideration. And so when I think about this axis of Aries and Libra, and especially these eclipses, I think about opening the heart. And when I talk about opening the heart, is where we are willing to be vulnerable and deal with our vulnerability and deal with asking questions. And this is where I'm going to get a little personal. I don't know if I always do that. I mean, I'm a pretty heady guy, so I often come from the head. And rather than dealing with opening and trusting in the heart. And this is what kind of surfaced for me in terms of thinking about these eclipses. Now, you're like, okay, so what's this got to do with Andrew Huberman? Well, as I was contemplating, and for those who don't know, so um, I believe it was the New York, not the New Yorker, but New York Magazine that has done a piece on Andrew Huberman's affairs, essentially. And he's not a married man that we know of, but he was in a what appeared to have been a stated monogamous relationship, and he had about six other people, six other women, who have come forth and said that he also gave the impression that he was in a monogamous singular relationship with them. Now, if you don't know who Andrew Huberman is, he's a neuroscientist and on the faculty of Stanford University, and he has a very popular podcast where this is the article Michelle just asked. This is the article that I posted on X. So he has a very popular podcast dealing with basically ways to apply principles of neuroscience and new developments in neuroscience and body physical optimization and helping people stay fit, stay healthy, get enough sleep. And I've listened to the podcast a number of times over the last 2 years. I think it gained more traction in 2021, but I believe he started it in 2019 or 2020. And so he has been, like Reese Witherspoon, other celebrities have cited him and getting 10 minutes of sunlight or 15 minutes of sunlight in the morning, which I have followed some of that advice. And so a lot of people have had a high amount of respect for him. And it got me thinking, especially with all these things, the story that has come out about his dalliances and affairs. Now, you might notice I rarely talk about celebrities by video or by Twitter. Certain celebrities, like I have been talking about P. Diddy on Twitter. But I generally don't talk about celebrities because it's none of my business, and I don't care. Generally, I don't care about celebrities, most of them. The royalty, I don't talk about royalty. I didn't weigh in on Kate Middleton because I don't care. And that's not to say that I don't care about them as people or aspects of consciousness, but one of the things I learned growing up in the hood and growing up in Bed-Stuy or, coming of age more in Bed-Stuy and North Philly, you mind your business. So I generally mind my business when it comes to people like this. I don't feel like they belong to me or I belong to them by virtue of their fame. That's my opinion, so I don't get into their astrology as much. But every now and again, I think there might be some public lessons to learn. And you might say, like, well, obviously, Sam, the public lesson to learn is, like, don't fuck around and find out. So, no. I mean, I agree on some level. I don't think it's good to cheat or to lead people along or be dating multiple people without them being aware that, you might be dating other people or with other people. All of that is clear. But I want to go back to what I was saying about the heart. And I have a particular message, even though I think there are a good number of women or people who identify as women or have been women in terms of having transitioned who are listening to me, but I do have a particular message for men. And you can pass this along. So I'm speaking about this as a man, as a straight man, which I believe Andrew Huberman is, but I don't know. Like I told you, I still mind my business, but it appears that he's mainly had these dalliances with women. And there's a couple things. Our culture teaches men to lead more from their prowess, their bodies, and their minds than from their hearts. And what Andrew Huberman may be demonstrating to us, because, maybe none of this is true. I don't know. But what he may be demonstrating, if this is true, and having these multiple affairs and because the women actually have come together, at least 4 or 5 of them have come together and compared notes. And he would actually be with one woman, maybe even sometimes minutes before he was with another woman. And I know about this scheduling, right? I'm not going to pretend I'm some innocent, like, no, I'm just a good old guy and whatever, and I just do whatever. And no, I have been my own kind of guy. And they were kind of amazed, and they talked about this in this article in the New York Magazine. They were amazed by the scheduling juggling alone. That's an act of the mind. And kind of just going along with scheduling and just doing all these other things because you can, that's also an act of the ego. And I also go along with a definition from Alan Watts about the ego, which he says the ego is what we put our focus and attention on. It's not just this, like, I have a sense of myself. I don't think having a sense of yourself is that bad. It's how you may have a sense of yourself. If your sense of yourself is just tied up with some particular aspect of yourself, like my mind, my body, my face, my neck, I don't know anybody who does that with their neck, but that kind of sense where you compartmentalize yourself, then it's likely that ego part of you has taken over. And I would say, again, if what is true about what Andrew Huberman has done and is doing in terms of these dalliances and these affairs, then it's leading from the mind and he's closed off his heart. Which, interestingly enough, as a neuroscientist who has a very popular podcast where he's talking about aspects of the mind, he's gotten ossified, I would imagine, into some aspect related to his mind. This is something I find that consistently or often affects men who gain some measure of power or popularity, especially when it's things tied to the mind or spirit. Now, there are people who weigh in on the women who kind of get entranced by that. But for a minute, I just want to talk about the men, and I want to talk to men, in the sense that men have, if you're going to do the work of being public facing and being spiritual, one, you have to start the work. This is the courage of opening your heart to dealing with your wounds. We have Mercury conjoined, or we're going to have Mercury again conjoined to Chiron. This is a time for men, particularly, to start dealing with their wounds related to their mothers, related to other women in their life, and not to take it out on the people you trust or who come to trust you. This is where you have to prepare yourself for that, because it's a slippery slope. I have slid, and I'm saying this as a confession, I have slid down that slope. Happened some time ago, but I've slid. And I've studied how I slid. And how I slid is that, we're just hanging out. And, I'm just sharing some things. Oh, she's coming over my house at midnight, but we're just going to watch a movie. Oh, we slept together, but it doesn't have to mean anything, right? And this slippery slope requires conversation. It requires discipline, because you may also get to decide, like, this is not the thing I need to do, and I need to avoid this. And if you want to be more, especially again to men, and I guess by, this is to women in the sense of reflectively or reflexively. If you want to be public facing and earn that and deal with that aspect of trust, it's going to require that sense of awareness. And it's going to require you opening your heart rather than just leading with your mind. Because that's what I believe happened with Andrew Huberman. He has a lot of air in his chart. And so I think it got caught up in, like, what I can do. I've seen this with men before. It's a certain kind of Mars mentality or Martial mentality where men think about what they can do rather than what they should do. I mean, I can sleep with 2 women in one night. Maybe I can do 3. Maybe I can just go out and, like, sleep with women in every town where I'm speaking. Wouldn't that be fun? Well, that's what does that say about the heart? Is the heart in that conversation? Is the heart open? Because the heart might say, like, well, okay, yeah, I can, but is that really what I want to do? Is it what I should do? Is that really what I'm sharing in terms of giving giving my heart and giving wisdom? Am I really giving wisdom, or is this just about me and what I can do? That's where we need to make a different shift, especially in terms of opening the heart, having real courage, because that is the lack of courage. And so, again, and it led me to also revisit this book. I know the title is backwards, so I'll read it for you. I started it some time back because I was working on Isar's ethics. I'll read the title in a minute. I was working on Isar's ethics document. And so I wanted to kind of dive deeper into, doing healing work and the questions of sex and other things that come up with human beings, especially between men and women. So the book is called Sex in the Forbidden Zone by Peter Rutter, MD. I don't know if this book is still widely in print, but the subtitle, which is important, When Men Empower Therapists, Doctors, Clergy, Teachers, and Others Betray Women's Trust. And again, I got this book because I wanted to better understand for myself and also for other men and also in the dynamic with other women, because I counsel a lot of women. And it's required a certain awareness of mind that I've had to cultivate on what not to do. There are practically no women who can say, like, well, he stayed in my DMs and he hit me up and propositioned me to kind of, I don't do that. Well, I should say with clients. Maybe there might be a friend or someone some time back, but no, I don't do that. So it's not, you have to kind of have set lines with clients, with students, in order to kind of really be not only protective of them, but also in terms of your integrity, your own courage, and to ask whether your heart is really involved or is it more about your ego and your power. And that's where we need to have a shift. Now, again, I'm not trying to speak about this on the end of for women, because I can't. I mean, I do know some things, but I think it's better for women to speak on these things, themselves. And I know many black women have, many women of color, many white women, all kinds of women can speak on this. But I don't hear enough men speaking to men or about men about this particular issue when they get in power. And that brings me to P. Diddy. I'm going to say this. If you didn't know that P. Diddy could be someone who gets in trouble with the law at the scale it seems he is, you've not been paying attention. I'm not going to talk about his astrology as much, because there are many other astrologers and psychics and other people who've been talking about this for over a year. So I think, P. Diddy is someone who also clearly, for various different lawsuits and various different reasons, who also was not responsible with the power he had and abused it related to and through his sexuality, whether that was with men or whether that's with women. And it doesn't matter. People's homophobia going like, oh, no Diddy, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. If you're going to leverage your sexuality as a weapon rather than from your heart, then you are abusive. And the question of who you sleep with is irrelevant as much as how you're sleeping with them. And it becomes more about your power and you and your ego than really, connecting from the heart. So I don't have as much to say about Diddy because I think it's a pretty clear lesson. And I'll just say this, and anyone who, grew up in the hood or knows, or when you have the FBI break down your door and arresting your children, you know you're in trouble because they're not going to come at your door. This is where I do agree with 50 Cent. They're not going to come at your door unless they have a case at that level. You know, they may, just knock on your door, in suits just to kind of say, hey, what's up? What's going on? And do their investigation. But when they show up like that, you got a case. And if they, once they take you in and once he's caught, because he will be caught, he's going to be caught. They're just going to take him in. So that's all I'm going to say. With Andrew Huberman, technically he's not committed a crime. And that's why I think he was a better conversation piece for me today. He's not committed a crime. He is coming off the heels of his Jupiter return. I think we're dealing with hubris. Andrew Huberman. And we're dealing with someone who may have betrayed some elements of the public's trust, although he wasn't sleeping with the public. So on some level, it's kind of like, well, it's not everyone's concern. But I think he's someone who could benefit from some measure of reflection. He's talked a lot about therapy. I hope he continues with his therapeutic pursuit and journey, and can step into more his heart and what his heart wants, rather than just doing, all these other things. Excuse me, like sleeping with multiple women, and without them knowing. I'm sex positive and sex forward, so I'm not saying like, oh, because he's a hoe. I mean, if you want to be a quote unquote hoe and you want to sleep with multiple people, go for it. But I think they should know. I think you should be able to have a conversation about it. That's what I think. I think it's I think your heart should be involved. I think you should ask if your heart's involved. If your heart is not involved, it's more your organs, reproductive organs. Okay, then I think it's also part of courage to say that. And saying like, oh no, we just fucking. Right. Exactly. That's correct. Be an honest hoe. But and that requires some measure of the heart. So that's what I came here to say. I'm not done talking about the eclipses, but I did want to talk about that. And when I say I'm not done talking about the eclipses, I will come on again and talk about the eclipses. Make sure that this is saved as a reel so I can post it. A couple of you said that there's some good things that I shared here. And I hope, if there are any men listening, that it has got you thinking, because I've been thinking, especially with the eclipses, dealing with our heart. So, yes, hey, King Simon, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh. Yeah, there's more I want to say about that, because I think what also helped me, it is Ramadan, and so I've been reading and meditating. I have not been able to fast. For a medical condition, I can't fast, but I feed. So I do do what the Sunnah recommends, which is to feed people, give them money for food or whatever they may need. But I've been reflecting, which I think is the nature of Ramadan, and thinking about the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and thinking about how we open our hearts. There's more I want to say. I do have to, get going for sessions, because what's interesting is that Ramadan ends just at the cusp of this eclipse that happens on April 8th. And I've been meditating for over a month on what I think likely will happen and what this might mean for the Ummah, which is for the community of Muslims, especially in terms of what's happening in Palestine and in Gaza. So I will weigh in on that. Thank you, everyone who's joined. It's good to see some familiar names and faces. Emma Bowman, hello. Emma. And also, and then Abby and Sana, and A Life Balanced. I'm looking forward to getting my my it's not. I was about to say my drink. Better not drink it, but my oil. Deborah Mack. So hello. And Renoko. Oh 06. Renoko. I mispronounced your name. Sorry. I think I saw Prita. Apkase hey Prita. Um. Prita's husband Ganan. Just had a film come out that I hope people will see. Um, I actually put it up on my Instagram, so check that out. It's on Amazon Prime, so do check it out. Um, I'm very proud of him that we have this film, that's dealing with an independence fighter from just before India won, got her independence. I want to say it was granted because the British had to succumb because when they're faced with injustices, and I think this is generally true, when faced with injustices, you know, these things will come to heal, both in terms of heal and heal. All right, with that said, auf Wiedersehen, and I will all talk to you later. Bye.